There's a little bit of an uproar going on right now online because in last night's episode of Game of Thrones, Cersei got a little bit raped. Now, here's the thing. People are arguing that in the books this act was totally consensual, yet if you go and look at the section, you can clearly see that Cersei says no in the books, and then she kind of goes with the flow. So does no mean yes? Does no mean perhaps? What's going on? Another thing that really struck me is that in the scene, in the show, you hear Cersei say, "This isn't right." Now, I'm sitting there watching the show going, which part isn't right? The fact that he's your brother, the fact that you're doing it in front of your son's corpse, or the fact that you're getting raped? Because that's a lot of things to pick from. Although as viewers, I think, Game of Thrones has done a really good job at desensitizing us to incest. So we just kind of go with the fact that it's incest, and then rape, that's where we draw the line. If you ask me, the scene is absolute trash. It is. It was there for shock value, nothing else. They took, and this is what kind of like ticked me off, they took a perfectly good scene in which Tywin, by the way, Tywin made this episode. Great speech, great lecture by Tywin about the most important quality that a ruler has to have, that a leader has to have, which is wisdom, because if you look at the other virtues individually and just focus on one, it'll lead to collapse. And what is wisdom? It's knowing what you know and what you don't know, which is why you need other people to help you rule. Great lecture, great speech. And so that scene is taken and then just completely shitted on by the rape scene. Not only that, but there's this part where Tywin is just shredding what Joffrey was as a king. As he should, because he was a total prick. But Joffrey is dead, okay? Insults can't hurt him. The thing is, though, like, in that same scene, you got Cersei there hearing her own father just verbally taking a shit on what her son was, right? So, and you can tell she can't say anything, she's just so traumatized. You can see her eyes watering, and this is an interesting thing that I've seen a lot of people bring up, is that like Tyrion, Jaime, and Cersei, in the presence of Tywin, automatically revert to being little kids. It just goes to show how powerful Tywin's grasp is when it comes to his children. And then there's also this part with him and Oberyn, and I don't have to explain why that scene is great. It's just the dialogue, specifically with his. I mean, who has the best dialogue in this series? I mean, Tyrion has some pretty good dialogue in this episode as well. But I feel like the way you exchange blows verbally is just so well crafted, to the point where you have like Tywin in a room with locked doors. And he's like, I mean, I'm totally unarmed. What's stopping you from killing me now? You can go ahead and do it. And Oberyn's like, you know me well enough. You know I wouldn't do that shit. So it's just kind of like this psychological back and forth. And, it concludes with, at least for now, Tywin getting Oberyn on his side. Obviously, there's no such thing as Oberyn being on Tywin's side. But at least for now, he's going to arrange a meeting with the Mountain so Oberyn can have his fight. Now, this shot here is just a clear case of you see what you want to see type of deal. If you listened to my last episode review, you know that this is proof of something. If you didn't, if you left the video before I kind of like talked about something that could be spoilery, then this is just a shot of Sansa's necklace as far as you're concerned. So, I really want to know what Littlefinger's motivation is, because I feel like if this is just to get into Sansa's pants, he's gone overboard with the creepiness. Braavos, interestingly enough, is brought up in both the Stannis storyline and in the Arya storyline. In the case of Stannis, it looks like they're going to be taking a loan because they need money from the Iron Bank to be able to fund their army. And in the case of Arya and the Hound, it was just kind of mentioned as a possible future destination. And by the way, you being the worst shit in the Seven Kingdoms is a badass insult. But the moment she said that, I'm like, really, Arya? Because that's a lot of shits you would need to run quality inspections on. They're completely alone in this open countryside. And so I feel like sticking together at this point makes the most sense. But at the same time, I feel like the Hound is kind of paving the road for Arya to just keep going into this path of hate and just mercilessness. And speaking of showing mercy to strangers, the wildlings and their friends, the cannibal, are on their way to just wreck shit at Castle Black. You got people saying, "Oh my gosh, there's so much sexual violence against women in this show. No, why? It's so misogynistic." I'm gonna keep watching it though. You bet your ass I'm gonna keep my HBO packet. So in this one episode, you have a scene where Cersei is getting raped, and then in the same episode, you have Ygritte killing a little boy's dad, and nobody bats an eyelash. The only difference here is that Ygritte killing a little boy's dad does not ruin Jaime's character development. And I think the value in having a Tyrion scene this week is that you actually get to see his deductive reasoning as it's happening. So he's ruling out all these possibilities. It couldn't have been Cersei, even though that's the person that he usually blames when shit happens to him. But he's like, no, say what you want about my sister, but she loves her children. And so, and the scene with Podrick was just like the icing of the cake, just because we get to see what Tyrion is really made of, like what his character is like. And that he wants to save himself, but at the same time, he understands that the people that he cares about are also going to have to, take risks. And that might cost them their lives. So he's weighing Podrick's life up against his own. And so in coming to the conclusion that Podrick's life is more important than his own, he lets his squire go. With a compliment, I might add. A really, really killer compliment. Now I think it's fitting to just end with Daenerys Targaryen, because I thought the final scene was very symbolic, obviously. Really, really nice ending. Some people found it a little bit, I think it cut out too early. But I think if you say that, it's probably because you were expecting some type of a battle sequence. And I think the whole purpose of that scene was merely just to send a political message so that you could possibly instigate some type of rebellion within the walls. Because really, if we're talking real talk, if Daenerys really wanted to just massacre everybody in that city, she would have done it by, instead of sending chains on those boxes, she could have just loaded up barrels of oil and then just have her dragons incinerate the entire city. But then again, you need to save on CGI, so no dragons for this scene. But because she has a political agenda as the breaker of chains, which by the way is the name of this episode, it's not about using brute force. This is the kind of thing that worries me about Daenerys, is that there's a very thin line between being assertive and being arrogant. And I feel like sometimes she flirts with that line really well. Potentially that could be very dangerous. So I also think it's kind of arrogant to assume that every town that she goes to, and because she's offering these slaves a choice, and I say choice in quotation marks because you don't really, is it really a choice? Because up until this point, all the slaves that she's liberated have, in one way or another, facilitated or just become part of her group. She's creating this alliance that is ultimately there to serve her. So I think it's worrisome that she might be under the assumption that it's always going to be dandy and it's always going to run smoothly. If you're really offering these slaves the opportunity to have freedom, you cannot think about them as this single-minded entity. Different people have different ways of viewing things. And these groups of slaves were from different locations, and people from different locations have different cultures, different points of view. So I think it's just a matter of time before some type of disruption happens. There's a moment that's coming up later on this season where one of Daenerys' advisors tells her sometimes it's best to answer injustice with mercy. And Daenerys replies, "I will answer injustice with justice." Well, somebody took that quote, and it's a Daenerys quote, and they tweaked it a bit and made a joke out of it. Because in this version, in the Daenerys realistically, what she really means is, "I will answer injustice with white imperialist supremacy. Hope you enjoyed my review. Overall, the episode I thought was okay plus, bordering on good. There were a couple of scenes I could do without, but still, you could tell that a lot of effort and just work goes into this show. Please like the video if you did. Check out my other Game of Thrones reviews if you haven't already, and subscribe to my channel if you desire to do so. Bye.